Hey, it's Mr. Buzz here. Today I want to talk about how much fret buzz should be in your bass sound. I'll see you inside the video. Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, also affectionately now known as Mr. Buzz. And today I want to talk about the role of fret buzz, string noise and general rattles in your bass guitar sound, and also how you start creating your own signature sound on the bass guitar. And also I want to share some of these incredible isolated bass videos that are now appearing where you can hear the greats absolutely soloed in the mix. So today's video has been inspired by one of our YouTube subscribers called John. I won't give away his last name out of respect and privacy to him, but we've been having a light-hearted dialogue on the YouTube comments now for the past couple of months about specifically the amount of fret buzz in my bass guitar sound. So let me share some of the comments from this conversation so you can see where this video came from. So the first one was a couple of months ago where he says to me, "You are the master of fret buzz. How do you do it, lol?" That then moves on to, "You amaze me how you get so much fret buzz when you demonstrate. Gives me such a laugh. Thanks, mate." And then I love this bit. "Hey, I'm not making any derogatory comments about your eyebrows. Ha ha ha." Brilliant. I love my eyebrows anyway. Then it goes on into, "Hey, Mr. Fret Buzz and the James. Decent lesson marred by your usual problem. It's a basic technique issue, not the fault of your guitar." Then it goes, "Hello, Mr. Buzz. I'm still here, buzzing away like crazy. Oh well, I tried, ha ha." Then he gets into a discussion with someone else and he says, "I totally agree. It's poor technique and the problem is James insists on playing directly over the frets. Such a shame because it ruins the enjoyment of the lesson." So I'll talk about my technique in just a second. But here's an interesting thing that I just want to kind of finish up on. So right at the end of this next comment, John actually states what he likes in bass guitar playing. And he says here, "I like accurate timing, clean notes and feeling. Hope I didn't bore you. Not exactly an illustrious music career, but I take pride in my playing." So John is someone who's played quite a bit of bass before. So this brings us on to a really interesting subject of what different players like in a bass guitar sound. So one of the things I see at eBassGuitar a ton, or get this question a lot, is what should I do? What is the right thing to do? And that's a really interesting question because with any bass guitar playing, I actually don't think there are any rights and wrongs. They're best practices which will create good bass lines, that's for sure. But so much of it from that point forward comes down to personal taste. So today, first of all, I want to talk about the genesis of how I created my bass guitar sound and what goes into it and why you may hear the occasional bit of fret buzz. So in just a second, I'm going to drill into three elements that make up my bass guitar playing. But first of all, I want to touch on a couple of concepts. I, like any musician who is really passionate about their craft, is always working on it. So the ideas I'm going to share right now are what I believe to be true for myself and what I like as a bass guitar player. Now, these ideas aren't fixed and rigid or anything like that. They're totally fluid. And what I say now might not necessarily be the same in 5 years' time. The second thing I want to point out is a context thing. And this is really, really so important. I've been playing now professionally for the best part of 20 odd years, and I've worked in everything from Abbey Road studios through to Wembley Arena through to top West End shows. And one of the things, the common thread with that is I'm always playing with drummers. There are very few moments where I'm soloed and really, really exposed. I do the job of what you expect a bass player to do. But it's only in the last 5 years or so that I've been teaching in this environment on YouTube, which is incredibly exposed, and you really hear every nuance of the bass guitar. So it's really important to appreciate this is very different, and so this is something I want to highlight as we go through the video. Now, the first thing is that I need to point out the sound that you have here is very, very different to a typical bass guitar sound. And there's one reason for this. So let me show you this. I'll play a simple C major scale. Now, I always have to teach with this little lav mic on here, Quite frankly, so you can hear what I'm doing and I can communicate to you. But what this does is it pulls out the high frequencies, which is naturally where any fret buzz or rattle lies. So what I want to do now is just turn off this microphone so you can hear it in action. So you already see that has a totally different flavor to the sound. And quite frankly, there's not much I can do about that because this, after all, is a teaching and education channel. So let's move on to element number one of my bass guitar playing that I want to pull out. So the first element I want to talk about right now is something that all of you may not know, that I'm actually a double bass or upright player too. I studied both the electric bass and the double bass kind of in tandem when I was at college. So it means my technique is kind of a hybrid of both of those. Now, to get a great sound out of the double bass, you have to play hard. It is an incredibly physical instrument, and that's something that I've brought to the bass guitar. So naturally, I do dig in. So let me show you. I'm going to play a phrase now. I'll play, let's say, Stevie Wonder's Duke, and I'm going to play it hard, typically how I would play it. So I'm now going to play it softer with a much lighter touch. So as you can hear, when you play lighter, it pulls out a lot of the fret noise. So which one should you choose? The reality is it's completely down to you. What sound do you prefer? I know I like digging in. That feels really, really good to me. And that leads into the second element that I want to talk about, which is what I call the commitment to the time. Now, I grew up at college playing a load of big band jazz. I still love doing that to this day. I love being at the back of the band, really digging in, putting my time feel down. So when you hear me play something, there is always a real commitment to the note. That's why I don't play too light. That's why I like to dig in. So let me give you an example. So as you can hear, there's a real commitment to the time and the placement, which is something I adore about being a bass player, that we have this power to really lay down where it's at rhythmically. Now let's move on to the third element. When I was about 25 years old, I was really fortunate to be asked to go and dep or sub on the West End show We Will Rock You here in the UK. And that was a massive learning curve for me. I was covering for a phenomenally good rock bass player called Neil Murray. And now Neil was in Whitesnake and the Brian May Band and a bunch of other things. And one thing he did was play super, super hard. He really, really laid it down and dug into the bass guitar. And I realized at that point, I really loved playing in that style. It just felt so visceral and so cool. And one of the things I also discovered during that period was the drop D tuner. So I want to show you this kind of in action now. So one of the things you're going to discover right now is when you put the bass in the context with the band, is what you'll actually discover is a lot of fret noise and a lot of the clanks and the rattles actually get lost with the drums because they're the same frequency as the cymbals. And that's what I want to demonstrate to you now. So I'm going to take about 16 bars from the track Headlong. I'm going to play it just with this lav mic on so you can hear it in the context of this room. Then I'm going to turn the lav mic off so you literally just hear the bass guitar DI. Then I'm going to play it with the drum track. And what you're going to start discovering is that all the little rattles and buzzes start sitting with the drum kit really nicely, in my opinion. And you just get that great sound of the bass guitar digging in. So here's the bass guitar in the room. With the mic off now. And then with the drums. So as you can probably tell, I adore playing that style. I really love digging in and playing super hard in the rock context. It's really exciting for me. Now, the principles of digging in really just come directly from your right or your plucking hand. So the left hand or fretting hand remains identical. What I like to do is play directly behind the fret, and that's what I teach my students over at the bass guitar. There you'll get the most solid note possible, and that's what I do in a day-to-day working situation. So to wrap up, I want to look at some isolated bass parts, because hopefully, as you've seen, a bass guitar sound in isolation is very different to when it's in the mix in a band. And there are all these wonderful isolated bass parts coming out now. First one I want to look at is the Paul McCartney bass line to Something. Now, it's quite famous that McCartney's Hofner bass in isolation doesn't sound that great, but when you actually put it in context with a band, it sounds absolutely magical. So when you listen to these bass parts, make sure you listen out for the nuances, those little buzzes, those little clatters, the slides, the short notes, the long notes, the articulation. There's so much to be gained from listening to these bass parts in detail. So let's start off with this one and listen to about 30 seconds of it. The next one I want to share with you is the isolated bass part from the John Paul Jones bass line to Ramble On by Led Zeppelin. So check this out. So as you can hear, these bass parts are super interesting to listen to closely. We'll put links to them in the description below so you can check them out more thoroughly. But I want to go from the sublime to the ridiculous now and check out some isolated John Entwistle from The Who. So hopefully you can hear the madness of his incredible isolated bass part. So guys, that's the end of today's video. Hopefully you can see when it comes to this stuff, there really are no rules. There's just personal taste and what you like and how you want to play. I'm totally open to discussing all of this stuff with my students. I'm a completely open book. So if you've got any comments, please do leave them in the description below. Right now, I'm going to leave you with a related video of how to stop fret buzz on your bass guitar if you're ending up with notes not working on the instrument from a technical perspective. So you can grab that video up there. I will catch you next week. Cheers. I've been James from eBassGuitar.com.